TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Sunlight crept through the threadbare curtains of the Miller family's weathered cottage in coastal Oregon, painting dusty beams across the chipped linoleum floor. Grace Miller, 22, lay still beneath a faded quilt, her heart already racing at the thought of another 18-hour shift at Seaside Manor Resort. At 19, she'd walked away from her final year of high school, sacrifice demanded by a father's sudden illness and an older brother's reckless debts. Now, each morning began before dawn. When the world still slept, Grace swung her legs over the mattress's edge, her thin slippers whispering against cold floorboards. She paused by the nightstand, where a crumpled prescription bottle held the last of her father's medicine. John Miller, once a sturdy logger with hands like carved oak, now coughed raspy warnings of fevers to come. The bill for his latest hospital stay hovered at 6 figures, an impossible burden. Even worse, her brother Ethan, 25, had squandered what little savings remained on poker tables and empty promises. Her mother, Karen Miller, spent her days juggling 2 part-time jobs, cleaning homes in the morning, stocking shelves at the supermarket by noon. Yet come every payday, Grace's paycheck vanished. Karen pressed crisp bills into Ethan's palm, firm by duty and denial. "He's our son," Karen would say, voice tight. "He needs this more than you." Each time, Grace's chest tightened, half with anger, half with pity. By 6 a.m., Grace stood before the chipped kitchen sink, scrubbing oatmeal residue from last night's breakfast bowl. Her reflection in the stainless steel faucet looked exhausted, dark circles under warm hazel eyes, wind-browned hair tied hastily in a bun. Still, she refused to break. For every bowl she washed, every hallway she scrubbed, and every towel she replaced, she earned enough to buy her father's next dose of antibiotics and perhaps a single cup of milk for her own breakfast. A soft knock at the door startled her. It was Mrs. Alvarez, her neighbor across the hall. Each morning, Mrs. Alvarez pressed a steaming mug of coffee into Grace's hand. "Take a moment, dear," she'd whisper. Grace would cradle the warmth, savoring the bittersweet comfort. In that brief pause, she tasted possibility until she remembered the clock. At 6:15 a.m., the shuttle to Seaside Manor departed, and every minute counted. Outside, the fog drifting off the Pacific lent the salt-tinged air a ghostly hush. Grace pulled her threadbare cardigan tight and hurried down the sidewalk, the neighbor's coffee sloshing in her thermos. She passed closed storefronts and weathered benches, each one a reminder that this small town lived at nature's mercy, and so did its people. Seaside Manor rose like a holiday postcard, white clapboard walls, balconies overlooking the dunes, and the distant howl of sea lions echoing beyond the dunes. Yet inside, its corridors felt impersonal and cold. Grace slipped on rubber gloves, retrieved a bucket of cleaning solution, and let the door click shut behind her. In the grand lobby, marble floors and brass fixtures gleaming, few noticed the young woman toiling in silence. But Grace didn't mind. Each polished railing meant one step closer to keeping her family afloat. At 22, she understood sacrifice better than most adults twice her age. She'd traded prom dresses for mop buckets, class essays for chore lists, and yet, in every scrubbed surface, she discovered a quiet determination. Each room told its own story. Honeymooners laughing over champagne, business travelers rushing off to meetings, children pressed to windows to chase gulls. To Grace, they were fleeting lives painted in brighter hues than her own. Still, she carried their joy in her heart, proof that beauty existed beyond hardship. When her shift finally ended, 12 hours later, her shoulders ached and her back begged for rest. But the sun had set only moments ago, and her evening was just beginning. a handful of GED study guides borrowed from the local library. She'd promised her father she'd earn that diploma, no matter how long it took. That night, as she traced her father's prescription label by lamplight, Grace felt the weight of responsibility settle deep in her bones. Yet beneath it, a flicker of something stronger. Hope. She whispered into the quiet room, "I'll make you proud, Dad." And somewhere beyond the fog-shrouded shore, the Pacific's steady roar answered back, relentless, unwavering, just like her. The fluorescent lights of Seaside Manor's back hallway flickered as Grace pushed her mop cart to the service elevator. Each ding of the carriage echoed her own exhaustion. Yet her mind buzzed with the looming confrontation. Tonight, when she returned home, she knew her mother would demand that her entire paycheck be handed over again. By 9:15 p.m., Grace trudged up the narrow staircase to the Miller house, her uniform damp with seawater mist from hallway windows left ajar. Karen Miller sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed over a heap of bills and collection notices. The single overhead bulb cast sharp shadows across her tired face. "Where is it?" Karen's voice cut through the room like a whip. Her blue eyes, once warm, had hardened into icy slits. Grace sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. "You know I don't get paid until Friday." She set a plastic bag containing dinner scraps on the counter. "I'll give you what I have tonight. Don't lie to me." Karen slammed a bill onto the table. "Your brother's car payment is overdue. They're calling about it right now. You make decent money. Why do you think?" Her tone dripped accusation. "Because Ethan gambled it away." Grace's voice trembled, but she kept it steady. "You chose to cover his debts, not mine." Karen's face flushed. "He's family." She jabbed a finger at Grace. "You might not understand responsibility. He's my son, too." Grace's chest tightened. She gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened. "And I'm your daughter. But every cent I earn goes to Ethan, while Dad's prescriptions go unfilled." She swallowed, fighting tears. "I'm exhausted, Mom. I can't do this anymore." Karen sprang up, knocking her chair to the floor. "How dare you?" Her voice quivered between anger and hurt. "After all I've sacrificed? I work 2 jobs, so this house is food, and you repay me with ingratitude." Grace shook her head. "You don't see me struggle. I clean rooms so guests can vacation, but who cares about me? You'd rather keep Ethan's bills paid than help Dad breathe easier." At that, Karen's lip quivered. She averted her eyes instead of confronting the truth. After a moment's silence, she swept the pile of papers into a messy stack. "You're right." Her voice softened for the first time. "Maybe I've treated him unfairly." She brushed a hand across her forehead. "I'm stressed. I just don't know how to fix it." Grace released her grip on the table and took a hesitant step forward. "I'm here, Mom. We're in this together. But I need a chance to help Dad, too." Her voice broke. "I don't want to resent our family for the rest of my life." Karen stared at her daughter's tear-streaked face. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay." She exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Starting tonight, any money you earn goes to Dad's treatment. After that, any spare goes to the car payment." Relief washed over Grace like a cleansing tide. She crossed the small kitchen, wrapping her arms around Karen's waist. "Thank you," she whispered. "I just want our family to heal." In that embrace, Karen's defenses melted. She rubbed Grace's hair. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I should have seen how hard you work, how much you give." Outside, the wind rattled the kitchen window. Inside, in the dim glow of a single bulb, mother and daughter stood together against the storm of their own making, and for the first time in a long while, felt the bond between them begin to mend. The next morning, Grace Miller arrived at Seaside Manor before sunrise, her thoughts still echoing last night's fragile reconciliation with her mother. She pushed her cleaning cart down the grand marble corridor, inhaling the crisp sea air drifting in through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows. The hush of dawn felt like a rare gift, moments before the resort filled with guests, before her long shift began. As she rounded a corner, she nearly collided with a tall man in a tailored navy suit. He steadied himself on the polished banister, his reflection shimmering in the marble. Grace recognized him immediately from the staff directory. Daniel Reed, the resort's CEO, known among employees for his exacting standards. Daniel's dark hair was neatly combed back, and his eyes, steel blue, alert, studied Grace with polite concern. She blinked, raising a hand to steady her mop bucket. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she said, voice caught halfway between surprise and nerves. "Morning," he replied, his tone warm but professional. He held out a sleek smartphone. "I found this in the West Wing trash chute. It's yours?" Grace's heart skipped. That phone was her lifeline, used for banking her wages, scheduling GED study sessions, even calling her mother to check on Dad's medicine. She hurried forward. "Oh, thank you. I thought it was gone forever." Daniel stepped aside, scanning the corridor. "It looked new. I figured someone must be frantic without it." Grace accepted the phone, her fingers brushing his. Yes. I appreciate it. I don't know how I lost it." Her cheeks warmed. In the glare of the morning lights, she realized how unusual it was for the CEO to rescue a rank-and-file housekeeper's device. "No problem," Daniel said, offering a reassuring smile. For a moment, his crisp suit and confident posture slipped into something more human, a willingness to help. "Be careful with it. And have a good day." With that, he strode off, leaving Grace blinking after him. She slipped the phone into her pocket and resumed her work, polishing brass fixtures with a smile she couldn't quite suppress. In room 204, she hummed along to an old cassette in her mind, feeling buoyed by the rare kindness. Throughout the morning, Grace found herself glancing up at surveillance cameras and remembering Daniel's measured gaze. By lunchtime, as she stacked fresh towels in the spa suites, her phone buzzed with an incoming email from Daniel's work address. Subject: coffee break? "Good afternoon, Ms. Miller. I wanted to make sure you got your phone back safely. If you have a moment, I'd like to invite you for coffee in the staff lounge at 3 p.m. My treat, just to confirm everything is working. Best, Daniel Reed." Her breath caught. She stared at the message, fingers trembling. A private coffee with the CEO? It felt impossible. Yet she knew that for Daniel Reed, responsible for a multi-million-dollar resort, to pause and check on her, he must have genuine concern. That afternoon, at exactly 3 p.m., Grace pushed open the door to the staff lounge. The sun slanted through half-drawn curtains, and a small table near the window held 2 steaming mugs and a plate of assorted pastries. Daniel stood by the table, removing his suit jacket and tying its sleeve to the back of his chair. "Ms. Miller," he said, standing as she entered. "I appreciate you coming. Mr. Reed, thank you for the invitation." Her voice wavered. She clasped her hands in front of her, suddenly acutely aware of her stained apron and weary eyes. "Please," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite. "Call me Daniel. I know your schedule is tight." Grace settled into the chair, tucking her mop bucket handle discreetly behind her. She picked up a mug of coffee, strong, black, and inhaled its rich aroma. "Sorry, I'm not much of a coffee drinker." Daniel laughed, warm and genuine. "That's fine. There's tea too. And these," he indicated the pastries, "are fresh from the kitchen." They sipped in companionable silence at first, the only sound the distant hum of lawnmowers outside. Grace felt the weight of judgment lift. Here, she was just a person, not a job title. Daniel broke the silence. "I've had housekeeping staff for 15 years, but your phone rescue got my attention." He leaned forward. "I imagine losing your phone is more than an inconvenience for you. Do you depend on it for more than just personal calls?" Grace nodded, wrapping her hands around her mug. "It's my link to Dad's doctors, my brother's rehab counselor, my GED study group. I need it to keep my life together." He listened thoughtfully. "That's a lot of responsibility for one device." He met her gaze earnest. "You're carrying more than just mop buckets, Grace." Her breath caught at him, knowing her name so quickly. I'm just doing what I have to do." Daniel offered a small smile, yet his eyes betrayed respect. That kind of dedication should be applauded, not just noticed when a phone is lost. Grace felt a shy warmth rise in her cheeks. In all her years behind guest stores, she'd never heard such praise from management above the line of service. "Thank you." He nodded, then tapped his laptop that lay closed beside him. "We're rolling out a special education grant for employees pursuing GED and college night classes. I'd like you to apply on the house." He waved off her protest before she could voice it. "Consider it an investment in talent I really want on my team." Grace blinked. "Daniel, I can't accept that. I haven't even graduated high school." He grinned, friendly but firm. "That's why it's for you. You're someone who puts family and future ahead of yourself. That's exactly the kind of drive we value." Tears pricked Grace's eyes, and she glanced down at her coffee. Her voice came out soft. "I thank you. Really." She paused, gathering courage. "When I first started here, I felt invisible. Now you make me feel seen." Daniel reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "You deserve to be seen, Grace. I want you to succeed, however far you choose to go." In the hush of the staff lounge, with the Pacific breeze stirring the curtains, Grace realized her life had taken an unexpected turn. A CEO who cared about her dreams. A chance at an education she'd thought impossible. This was the moment everything shifted. She lifted her eyes to meet Daniel's, hope shining in her tired gaze. Outside, the resort's waves continued their endless rhythm. Inside, Grace sipped her coffee with renewed determination. Knowing that tomorrow's challenges would still arrive, with mop buckets and mother's demands, but now, she would face them with an ally in her corner and a map toward a brighter future. Cole Reed had always believed his path was laid out for him by birthright, the youngest heir to the Reed family's hospitality empire, destined for a life of boardrooms and gala receptions. At 25, he had traded childhood strength, once spent wrestling his older brother Daniel in the living room, for business school cunning. He'd scoffed at the help since his first day shadowing the CEO down Seaside Manor's corridors, convinced that their labors were beneath him. That morning, however, he found himself face-to-face with Grace Miller, the very housekeeper whose phone Daniel had returned and who had earned the CEO's rare praise. He recognized her name from the staff email thread Daniel had CC'd him on, offering Grace an education grant. He felt a flash of irritation. What did a girl who spent her days scrubbing toilets know about ambition or company strategy? Determined to prove his belief in meritocracy, that privilege was only for the truly deserving, Cole made a point of crossing paths with Grace that afternoon. He found her kneeling by a balcony's baseboard, edge of her uniform skirt tucked behind her. Her dark hair was tied back in a bun, the straps of her work gloves fraying. "Hey, Miller," he called, voice echoing against the polished glass. Grace looked up, brushing sweat from her brow. The sun slanted in sharp angles across her features, and for a moment, Cole paused. He might have expected resentment or embarrassment, but Grace simply stood and offered him a curt nod. "What do you want, Mr. Reed?" she asked, tone polite yet guarded. Cole crossed his arms, leaning against the railing. "If you're so keen on education, why not focus on GED classes instead of thinking you can go to college?" His words landed roughly, defensive. Grace straightened, placing her gloves in her apron pocket. "Is it not possible to do both, work and study? Many people hold jobs while pursuing degrees." He scoffed. "That's for people without real responsibilities. You'll never keep up with a rigorous curriculum working full shifts." For an instant, anger flashed across her eyes, but she swallowed it. "I've managed so far," she said quietly. "And frankly, Mr. Reed, my responsibilities drive me. They don't limit me." Cole stiffened, taken aback by the unwavering calm in her voice. He pushed off from the railing. "We'll see how long that lasts," he muttered, turning to leave. Still, Grace's resolve had unsettled him. Over the next few days, he found himself watching her from afar. The way she squared her shoulders when addressing a demanding guest, how she shook out her mop to maximize coverage, how she paused mid-task to smile at a returning staff member's greeting. It was far more dedication than he'd ever see among some of his own interns. Late one evening, Cole discovered Grace in an empty conference suite, hunched over a battered GED study guide. Her mop bucket rested forgotten by the door, and a single lamp illuminated pages crowded with her neat handwriting. She'd marked problems on algebra and English grammar, but her brow creased over vocabulary quizzes. Cole hesitated in the doorway. For the first time, he felt an impulse to help rather than mock. He cleared his throat. Miller? Grace jerked upright, her book snapping shut with a sharp crack. Mr. Reed, it's late. He stepped inside and flipped on the overhead lamp. So you really are doing this, studying after a 12-hour shift? Her eyes betrayed exhaustion, but she nodded. I want a degree. Not because it's easy, but because it means I earned it. Cole swallowed. I've only ever learned from textbooks and lectures. I never bothered to see what it took to balance everything. Grace regarded him steadily. College can be a full-time job, but every bit of effort counts. He looked at the workbook. The math problems were scribbled out incorrectly, the grammar notes crossed and recrossed. May I? He asked, gesturing to a math question on the page. I used to tutor high schoolers in algebra. She hesitated, then handed him the book. Go ahead. Cole sat beside her, flipping back to the basics. Solving for x, distributing exponents. He explained the steps quietly, his voice losing its edge. Each time Grace got an answer right, her face lit with relief. When she stumbled, Cole guided her with patient corrections, never condescending, always focused. After nearly an hour, Grace closed the book. She rubbed her eyes, visibly more confident. Thank you, she said. Cole nodded. You're tougher than I gave you credit for. A crack appeared in his formerly impermeable pride. He gathered the books and straightened. You still need to rest. Grace stood, placing her pens back in a pencil pouch. I will. Good night, Mr. Reed. That night, Cole lay awake in his penthouse suite above the resort, the echo of fluorescent lights still in his mind. He realized he'd traded respect for a paycheck long before Grace had ever set foot in the lobby. He chastised himself for underestimating her. At 2 a.m., he sat at his desk, launching a new folder on his computer labeled Employee Scholarships, and added Grace's name, along with several other promising staff members he'd never bothered to know. The next morning, Cole sought Grace out in the staff break room. She was sipping tea, eyes puffy from studying late. He cleared his throat. Ms. Miller? Grace looked up, surprised to see him donning casual slacks and a polo shirt. Mr. Reed. He held up a printed memo. I added you to a list for a paid internship rotational program. It's a new pilot, classroom training, and hands-on workshops across our resorts. Her eyebrows shot up. Why? Cole took a breath. Because you have drive. Because I witnessed your determination. Gladly, Daniel approved it when I told him. He smiled, forgoing the formalities. Call me Cole, please. It's not every day I meet someone who shatters my assumptions. Grace stared at the paper, then at him. Careful not to let her emotions show, she reached for his hand and gave it a firm shake. Thank you, Cole. That handshake sealed a transformation neither of them expected. In the weeks that followed, Grace excelled during the rotating assignments. She absorbed leadership lessons alongside corporate managers, contributing sharp insights about guest experience and operational efficiency, perspectives few high-flying executives brought forward. Cole, in turn, found himself seeking her advice. When designing a new guest app interface, he'd consult Grace on what housekeeping staff actually needed to streamline communication. When drafting training manuals, he'd ask for her feedback on tone and clarity. In his mind, Cole gradually reframed his belief in merit. It wasn't solely about pedigree or polished resumes. It was about character revealed through action and integrity. Grace's unwavering focus, born of necessity rather than privilege, demanded respect. By the time Grace returned to her GED classes, now supported by both Daniel's grant and Cole's internship program, their relationship had evolved from dismissive distance into mutual respect. Their unlikely partnership, housekeeper and heir, became the stuff of staff room lore, inspiring colleagues across every shift. And somewhere amid boardroom deals and guest reviews, Cole Reed discovered a truth far more valuable than any profit margin. Genuine leadership meant recognizing potential wherever it appeared, even in the hands of a mop-wielding 18-hour worker whose hardest lessons came not from textbooks, but from the grit of her own life. Vanessa Walker watched Grace Miller from across the polished marble lobby of Seaside Manor, her dark eyes narrowing as she clutched a half-empty latte. At 24, Vanessa was the heiress to Walker Resorts, a luxury brand rivaling the Reed's empire. She flitted through board meetings and charity galas, accustomed to praise and privilege. Yet when she learned Daniel Reed had personally intervened to rescue a housekeeper's phone, then extended her a scholarship and internship, something in Vanessa's carefully curated world unraveled. Moments later, Fiona Brooks emerged from behind the concierge desk, Daniel's stepmother and the Manor's senior vice president of operations. At 42, Fiona prided herself on loyalty to the Reed legacy, yet she resented Grace almost as much as Vanessa did. Fiona's ambitions had been derailed by Grace's unexpected rise. First the phone rescue, then the GED grant, now whispers of a fast-track leadership program. They met in the staff-only executive lounge, where the afternoon sun glinted off crystal decanters and cityscape photographs lined the walls. Fiona placed a delicate teacup on the tray. "Vanessa, I appreciate you coming," she began, voice low and controlled. Vanessa sipped her latte, a smirk playing across her lips. "I wouldn't miss it. This housekeeper-turned-hotshot situation is amusing. Tell me, Fiona, how does Daniel justify elevating Grace above his own family?" Fiona exhaled softly. "He claims she embodies our brand values: hard work, humility, resilience. But it's courting disaster. We're talking about a young woman who's never attended college, with no pedigree, no network." "Exactly," Vanessa cut in, setting her cup down. "Her sudden star status undermines everything we've built. Investors glance nervously at our stock whenever she makes headlines." Fiona's lips pressed into a thin line. "I've already arranged a meeting with Human Resources. We'll present evidence that Grace accepted unauthorized gratuities from a VIP guest, violating our code of conduct." Vanessa's eyebrow rose. "Do you actually have proof?" Fiona tapped her finger on a dossier. "I intercepted a security camera clip of Grace pocketing a thick envelope in Suite 512 last Tuesday night." She slid a tablet across the table. On the screen, Grace's uniformed hand slipped into a guest's handshake envelope, clearly more than $5, but opaque enough to blur the amount. Vanessa's smile grew colder. "Good. That's enough for suspension pending investigation. But we'll need more, something to keep the gossip alive." They outlined their plan. Plant tip evidence. Fiona would bribe a complicit banquet server, Marcus, to tip Grace a wad of cash beneath a banquet table. Marcus, who owed Fiona a favor for keeping his late-night closure slip confidential, would deposit a visible roll of bills in Grace's locker. When discovered, it would corroborate the security footage. Forged digital logs. Vanessa's assistant, a tech-savvy intern named Laura, would hack the housekeeping app logs to show that Grace logged extra hours she would later sell as private tutoring sessions to wealthy guests. The false overtime would suggest she profiteered from her position. Leak rumors to staff. Over tea service and in hushed group texts, Fiona and Vanessa would spread whispers that Grace was cozying up to Daniel and Cole to secure her promotions, implying ulterior motives of flirtation or blackmail. In a culture eager for scandal, such rumors would fester. Trigger a customer complaint. Vanessa would call in a minor lost item complaint from a fictitious VIP account, claiming Grace had stolen a guest's earring. Even if nothing came of it, the mere accusation would stain Grace's reputation. As they finalized details, Fiona's phone buzzed. She glimpsed an email notification from HR. "Perfect timing," she said, brow arched. "I've already sent the tip evidence to Elliot Hayes in compliance. Grace will be suspended first thing tomorrow." Vanessa sipped her latte, savoring the moment. "I'll set up a photo-ready HR meeting. Everyone will see her escorted out in uniform. The optics will kill her credibility. Fiona rose, smoothing the pleats of her pencil skirt. After that, we'll position the new candidate for the leadership program, someone with real experience. We can't let Reed Resorts slip into chaos because Daniel's soft spot. Vanessa stood as well. Agreed. Let's make sure nobody remembers Grace as anything but a rule breaker. That evening, Grace returned to the staff entrance to find a small envelope tucked into her locker. She frowned at the expensive stationery and ripped it open, revealing a stack of $100 bills neatly banded together. Her pulse quickened. "Finders keepers," she whispered, eyeing the cash. But she'd signed a strict gratuity policy. Any gift over $20 had to be reported. Anxiety gnawed at her. Where had the money come from? Who had slipped it there? Before she could decide, her phone vibrated with an email. From Elliot Hayes, HR Director. Subject: Urgent. Policy violation. Immediate suspension. Ms. Miller. This afternoon. Our security cameras captured you receiving unreported cash from an unidentified guest. Per company policy, you are suspended with pay effective immediately pending investigation. Please return your work badge and equipment to my office by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Elliot Hayes. Grace's world tilted. She fingered the envelope in horror. She'd never touched an envelope like this, never dared. Panic surged. Who had set her up? She spent a sleepless night replaying her shift. Did she really accept money? The security footage flashed in her mind. She knew she'd never do that, but the evidence was damning. Her phone lay dead on the bedside table, and she fell asleep sobbing, thoughts racing about her family's needs. By dawn, rumors had already spread. Housekeeping teams whispered in break rooms, Bell staff exchanged knowing glances, and even front desk clerks murmured as guests checked in. Heard Grace got greedy, one quipped. Suspended for taking tips. Another added, poor girl, hubby probably spent it all on that GED tuition he bragged about. Grace arrived at HR's glass-paneled office in her crisp uniform, clutching the unexplained envelope and her credenza badge. She stood before Elliot Hayes, lean, severe, spectacles perched on the end of his nose. "Ms. Miller," he said, voice cold. "This is a serious breach. With the footage and this gift found in your locker, we have no choice." Grace stammered, her throat dry. I didn't put that money there. I've never touched unreported tips. You have to review the tape. I'll show you my locker key wasn't used until that server left." Elliot's frown deepened. "The logs show your badge was used. And security cameras don't lie. You'll receive your pay through the suspension, but you are not to return to the resort until we conclude our inquiry." Grace nodded numbly, tears forming. She left HR's office, uniform pressed but dignity in tatters, head bowed as she marched through the lobby's opulent arches, each pass under the chandeliers a reminder of her fall from grace. Meanwhile, Vanessa and Fiona met in a private boardroom on the resort's top floor. Fiona leaned back triumphantly. Everything unfolded perfectly. Elliot bought the footage, the tip, the logs, he didn't even blink. Vanessa clapped softly. Grace's suspension announcement went viral on the employee portal. She'll be out for weeks, or gone for good. Fiona opened a drawer and withdrew a slim file. "And I've forwarded the customer complaint from Mrs. Davenport to Daniel. He'll learn Grace's name came up in a theft claim. Even if it's dismissed, the stain remains." Vanessa closed her eyes, savoring her victory. "Soon, we'll introduce our own candidate, someone who respects our brand's heritage." She tapped her fingers. "I can't wait to see Grace's face when she realizes how deep this goes." Grace spent the next days locked in a haze of shock and despair. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, haunted by the ledger of bills awaiting her mother's signature and the unread emails from Daniel's scholarship committee. Each sound of her phone buzzing brought dread rather than hope. At Seaside Manor, whispers grew louder. The leadership team, once supportive, now exchanged disapproving glances. Cole Reed's call, "I heard the news," felt like another blow. Daniel's texts went unanswered. In vanquishing Grace, Vanessa and Fiona believed they had secured the resort's reputation and their own positions. Yet they had underestimated something neither privilege nor malice could suppress: the unbreakable resolve of the underdog. As Grace Miller braced for the worst, she had no idea her allies were rallying, and that in the darkest hour, truth has its own way of rising. The morning sun cast long shadows through Daniel Reed's corner office, its expansive windows framing the rugged Oregon coastline. Daniel sat at his mahogany desk, reviewing financial projections when he noticed a string of unread emails from Grace Miller. His brow furrowed. He had expected Grace's acceptance for the GED scholarship and internship program. Instead, her inbox swelled with notices of suspension, policy violations, and indignant pleas. He clicked open her most recent message. From Grace Miller. Subject: Please help. Daniel. I have no idea how this happened. I would never. Suspended until further notice. Grace. His chest tightened. Something was wrong. Daniel replayed the staff announcement sent by Elliot Hayes, the HR director. Ms. Miller's suspension is effective immediately due to evidence of unreported gratuities and policy violations. He closed his laptop with a sharp click. He called Cole's direct line. Cole, it's Daniel. We need to meet now, boardroom, floor 14. Cole Reed found his brother pacing before a large whiteboard labeled Q3 Initiative in the glass-walled conference room. He took in Daniel's tense stance, shoulders squared, eyes narrowed. Tell me it's not what I think, Cole said, dropping into a leather chair. Daniel gestured at the whiteboard. Grace Miller. Suspended overnight. Caught allegedly taking unreported cash tips and falsifying time logs. He tapped the board, where the plan from Vanessa Walker and Fiona Brooks had been sketched: accusations, frame-up operations, fake security footage. Cole leaned forward. We saw the complaints. I didn't believe them. Daniel nodded. They're good at manipulation: phone hacking, false logs, planted envelopes. They leveraged HR to make this look airtight. Cole's jaw set. We have to clear her name. Daniel crossed to his desk and retrieved a sealed manila folder. I kept a backup of all security footage from last week, uncompressed, unedited. And I asked the IT team to flag any manual overrides in the housekeeping app logs. Cole's eyes lit up. Then we can compare the raw footage to the clip Elliot saw. Daniel opened the folder, sliding out a flash drive. Here are the logs. I've also pulled staff swipe records from the building access system, every badge read for Grace, the banquet server Marcus, and anyone who entered her locker area. Cole tapped away at Daniel's laptop, importing logs into a spreadsheet. Within minutes, he highlighted anomalies. At 8:12 p.m. Tuesday, Grace's badge shows no entry near Suite 512. At 8:30 p.m., a misaligned frame in the security footage shows a hand, not Grace's, slipping an envelope into her locker. Manual timestamp edits appear in the housekeeping app, coinciding precisely with Vanessa's intern, Laura, on duty. Cole turned to Daniel. Look at this. Laura's account was used to modify Grace's overtime entries at 11:02 p.m. No one was in that terminal except her. Daniel frowned. We need testimony. If we confront Marcus, he'll admit Fiona asked him for a favor in exchange for covering a late-night shift. Cole nodded. And we have DVR archives to show Grace never entered Suite 512's closet area. The only badge read for that event was Marcus's. Daniel printed the timeline and evidence packets. Let's bring Elliot Hayes and HR's head of compliance into this. If we present concrete proof, we can demand Grace's immediate reinstatement and disciplinary action for those responsible. Cole hesitated. We should also anticipate Vanessa and Fiona's fight back. They'll claim it's a smear campaign. Daniel's jaw tightened. All the more reason to build an airtight case. Today by noon, Grace will be vindicated. At 10 a.m., Daniel strode into the HR department alongside Cole, the dossier of evidence clutched in his hand. They found Elliot Hayes in his glass-encased office, phone to ear. He gestured them inside, annoyance flickering across his face. Daniel, what's this about? Elliot asked, lowering the phone. Daniel placed the printed logs on Elliot's desk. I have reason to believe Ms. Miller was framed. The security footage we reviewed this morning shows clear discrepancies. Elliot glanced at the first printout. This isn't what the VHS clip showed me. Daniel tapped the page. Because Fiona Brooks supplied you with a heavily edited version to implicate Grace. Here is the uncompressed footage timeline. He slid a USB drive across the desk. Cole clicked it into Elliot's computer and opened two video windows, the official clip and the raw footage. As they played simultaneously, Elliot's brow furrowed. In the raw feed, a brief glitch occurred at the moment of the tip exchange. The timestamp jumps. In the official clip, that glitch is overwritten by a smooth timestamp, aligning with Grace's presence. Elliot swallowed. This is manipulated. Cole brought up the staff access logs. And here, the access badge records clearly show that Grace's keycard was not used at the time of that incident. Only Marcus's was. Elliot rubbed his temples. I see the discrepancy. Daniel pressed on. Furthermore, our housekeeping app logs were tampered with at 11:02 p.m. by account ID, L. Walker intern. That belongs to Vanessa Walker's assistant, registered under Fiona's direct reports. He pointed at the spreadsheet. They fabricated overtime records to suggest Grace profited from extra hours. Elliot stared at the data, then at Daniel. His face drained color. I'm sorry, Grace. Daniel held up a hand. No apologies yet. We need to restore Grace's status immediately and open an internal investigation into Vanessa Walker and Fiona Brooks for malfeasance and harassment. Elliot nodded, issuing directives into his headset. Inform compliance, freeze any disciplinary actions against Ms. Miller, and schedule a hearing with legal. I'll notify both parties to present their evidence by 2 p.m. Cole placed a hand on Elliot's shoulder. Thank you. At 2 p.m., the executive boardroom filled with tension. Vanessa Walker arrived in a sleek charcoal dress, confidence radiating from her every step. Fiona Brooks entered afterward, immaculate in navy. Daniel and Cole sat at the head of the U-shaped table, flanked by Elliot and the chief compliance officer, Marissa Chen. Grace sat beside them, her uniform spotless, but her eyes red-rimmed with anxiety. Elliot began the meeting. We have reviewed all available evidence. The allegations against Ms. Miller are now considered unsubstantiated. Grace, you are reinstated effective immediately, with full back pay for your suspension period. He turned to Vanessa and Fiona. However, this meeting will also consider charges against Ms. Walker and Ms. Brooks for willful misconduct, defamation, and orchestrating a cover-up. Vanessa's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm curious, what evidence do you have to overturn my perfectly valid complaint? She glanced at Fiona. I demand full disclosure. Daniel rose, voice icy. Here are the raw security logs from the DVR archives. Observe how the footage presented to HR was edited to insert Grace's presence where none existed. Additionally, here are the badge swipe records. Grace never entered the locker area at 8:12 p.m. Only Mr. Marcus did. He laid out printed logs. Here are housekeeping app logs that show logins and edits made by L. Walker intern at 11:02 p.m. on two separate occasions. Cole tapped the table. We've subpoenaed Marcus for testimony. He'll confirm Fiona asked him to take care of a favor in exchange for covering her shift. Laura Walker, Vanessa's assistant, confessed to doctoring the code to alter Grace's recorded hours. Marissa Chen reviewed the documents, her expression grim. These actions violate multiple company policies, including tampering with official records, defamation of an employee, and abuse of managerial authority. Vanessa Walker and Fiona Brooks are to be placed on administrative leave pending full disciplinary review. Grace exhaled, tears of relief brimming. She met Daniel's gaze. He offered a reassuring nod. Vanessa's composure cracked. You can't do this. He's my business partner's best friend. She snapped her fingers. I demand an appeal to the board of directors. Fiona paled. This is political. You're protecting her because she's your pet. Fiona turned on Daniel. You'll regret this, Daniel. Reed Resorts isn't big enough for all of us. Cole stood, stepping forward. Fiona, corporate success comes from integrity, not manipulation. If you continue this tantrum, legal action will follow. You know that, and so do I. Elliot chimed in. Ms. Walker and Ms. Brooks, you have 24 hours to surrender all company assets in your possession, access cards, keys, documents. Any further attempt to influence witnesses or tamper with evidence will result in immediate termination and possible criminal referral. Fiona's voice quavered. You're ruining my career. Daniel's tone softened only slightly. You chose to undermine an innocent employee for personal gain. This isn't about careers. It's about justice and preserving our company's honor. Vanessa glared at Grace before storming out, Fiona trailing behind. The room fell silent as the door closed with a decisive click. As Daniel and Cole shepherded Grace out of the boardroom, Marissa offered her a clipboard with forms to reactivate her access badge. Grace's hand shook as she signed. Cole draped an arm around her shoulders. Welcome back, Grace. Daniel smiled. And we'll be covering the costs of your GED prep classes retroactively, plus a one-time bonus for the hardship you endured. Grace's eyes brimmed with gratitude. Thank you, both of you. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her back. You earned this. No apologies should have been necessary. Down in the lobby, rumors had already begun to shift. Employees paused as Grace passed, offering smiles and nods instead of whispers. As she moved through the grand foyer, she felt the weight of her uniform transform from a symbol of servitude to a badge of resilience. Outside, the Oregon sun dipped toward the Pacific horizon, casting Seaside Manor in golden light. Daniel and Cole watched from the revolving doors as Grace stepped into the twilight, her head held high. Together, they had dismantled a carefully constructed conspiracy, and in doing so, reaffirmed a lesson beyond any boardroom. True leadership isn't about privilege, but about standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. And in that stand, Grace Miller found not just vindication, but a community willing to fight by her side. The morning light filtered through the blinds in Grace Miller's modest apartment, illuminating textbooks, notebooks, and a solitary mug of cooling coffee on her desk. Just weeks earlier, she'd endured the shame of suspension and the sting of betrayal, her reputation nearly destroyed by Vanessa Walker and Fiona Brooks's conspiracy. Now, as she rose from her desk chair, a sense of purpose thrummed through her veins. Today marked the beginning of her new chapter. By 7:30 a.m., Grace descended the worn staircase to the apartment complex's laundry room, her crisp Seaside Manor polo replacing the faded apron she once wore. The apartment above had become her study sanctuary, and now, as a reinstated employee with Daniel and Cole's unwavering support, she was determined to seize every opportunity ahead. At 8 a.m., she arrived at the local community college where she'd enrolled in GED preparatory classes. The campus quad bustled with students hauling backpacks and sipping lattes, an atmosphere of possibility. Grace flashed her student ID at the desk and made her way to room 214, where Ms. Renee Caldwell, her GED instructor, greeted her with a proud smile. You're on time, Ms. Caldwell said as Grace took her seat. That's excellent dedication. Grace nodded, sliding her notebook from her satchel. The weeks since her reinstatement had been grueling, 12-hour shifts at the resort, followed by coursework in math, English, and science. Yet each completed assignment, every solved equation, every written essay, felt like a triumph. Over the next 2 hours, Grace tackled algebraic expressions and practiced grammar drills. When the bell rang, she lingered to ask Ms. Caldwell about college-level writing courses. Professors look for clear structure, Ms. Caldwell explained, reviewing Grace's latest essay. You've improved remarkably. Keep practicing and consider our night degree program. Grace scribbled notes eagerly. That suggestion fueled her ambition, not only to earn her GED, but to pursue an associate's degree in hospitality management. At 11 a.m., a text buzzed on her phone. Cole Reed, meet me by the HR offices at noon. I have news. Grace's pulse quickened. She headed back to Seaside Manor, reflecting on how far she'd come. Not long ago, she believed her career limited to housekeeping. Now, whiffs of opportunity beckoned beyond scrubbing floors. At precisely noon, she found Cole waiting by the glass-walled HR suite. His usual crisp shirt was replaced by a button-down and khakis, a more casual tone. "Grace," he began, voice warm. "Congratulations are in order." He handed her an elegantly embossed envelope bearing the Seaside Manor crest. She unsealed it eagerly to find official acceptance into the resort's newly launched leadership development program, an intensive 18-month rotation through departments including guest services, operations, finance, and human resources. A stipend covered her tuition and living expenses. "I'm honored," Grace whispered, eyes brimming. "I don't know what to say." Cole grinned. "Say you'll lead our next departmental meeting." Her laugh sounded bright as she tucked the envelope carefully into her bag.
"Deal."
2 weeks later, Grace donned business casual attire for her first rotation, front desk guest services. At 8 a.m., she joined a huddle of trainees in the lobby's staff lounge, where Daniel Reed himself addressed the group. He delivered a rousing speech on Seaside Manor's ethos. "Excellence isn't a department, it's every person's mission. You, our inaugural class, represent the future of hospitality. I expect each of you to innovate, collaborate, and lead with integrity." Grace nodded, absorbing each word. When the meeting adjourned, she introduced herself to fellow trainees: Alex, a former line cook, Maria, an events coordinator, and Raj, an IT specialist. None had the lived resilience of her own experience, yet all shared ambition. Over the next 8-hour shift, Grace rotated between guest check-in, concierge inquiries, and amenities coordination. She noticed small inefficiencies, duplicate data entry between systems, unclear signposting for returning guests, and jotted ideas for process improvements. Guests responded to her genuine warmth and problem-solving acumen, often complimenting her by name. At day's end, she compiled a brief report on her observations and proposals, emailing it directly to Daniel and Cole. Within minutes, Cole replied, "Excellent insights. Let's discuss implementing your dashboard idea next week." Grace smiled, her confidence blossoming. Nights found Grace back at campus, this time in a lecture hall for her Introduction to Hospitality Management course. She sat among recent high school grads and working adults, attentive as Professor Mark Boudreau outlined revenue management strategies and staff optimization models. Grace contributed real-world anecdotes, her overnight shift experiences, her perspective on guest staff communication that made her classmates lean forward in interest. After class, she joined a study group in the campus coffee shop. They pored over case studies of hotel chains and debated brand loyalty versus cost leadership. Grace's disciplined study schedule allowed her to excel. When midterm grades posted, she ranked at the top of her cohort. One evening, she arrived home to find her mother, Karen, anxiously waiting with John's medical bill. Grace set her books aside and opened her laptop on the kitchen table. "Mom, look," she said, showing a printout of her scholarship award stipend component. "This covers Dad's treatment and a bit extra. No more worrying about money." Karen's eyes glistened. She enveloped Grace in a hug. "You've done this all yourself." I'm so proud." For the first time in years, Grace allowed herself a deep exhale. She'd reclaimed her life and helped heal their family. By the end of her first semester, Grace transitioned into her next rotation, operations management. She shadowed department heads overseeing housekeeping, maintenance, and food and beverage. Daniel took note of her rapid learning curve and willingness to step into high-stakes situations, like coordinating emergency repairs during an unexpected storm that washed out a beachfront path. One afternoon, Daniel invited Grace to tour a new spa construction site. He pointed to structural blueprints, then to her. "You'll oversee this build-out," he said. "I trust your judgment." Grace's heart soared. To be entrusted with a multi-million-dollar project was validation beyond what she'd imagined when she first scrubbed lobby tiles. On a crisp Saturday morning 6 months later, Grace stood on stage in her cap and gown at the community college's commencement ceremony. The auditorium filled with proud families and faculty. When Chancellor Linda Ortiz announced her name, Ms. Grace Miller, summa cum laude, GED class of 24, a roar of applause erupted. Tears pricked Grace's eyes as she accepted her diploma. In the front row, Karen and John Miller stood, beaming. Outside, Cole and Daniel awaited her with flowers. After the ceremony, President Ortiz approached. Ms. Miller, I'd like to offer you a guest lecture slot in next semester's student orientation. Share your story. Grace nodded, voice husky. I'd be honored. That evening, Grace returned to Seaside Manor's shores, a vastly different role than scrubbing floors. She transitioned into the leadership development program seamlessly, forging relationships across departments and earning her colleagues' respect. Soon, she would graduate into an assistant operations manager position, with both Daniel and Cole championing her appointment. As she watched the sun set over the Pacific from the resort's clifftop terrace, Grace reflected on her journey, the sacrifice of her youth, the trials of corporate intrigue, the supportive allies who emerged, and her own steadfast resolve. A soft breeze carried the promise of new opportunities, university degree programs, strategic leadership roles, perhaps even the chance to shape policies so no future housekeeper would face what she had endured. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Daniel, congratulations on your GED graduation. Looking forward to your guest lecture next week. See you at 9 a.m. Monday in the Coliseum Hall. Grace smiled, pocketing the phone. In her palm, the diploma glinted under the terrace lights. She breathed deeply, feeling the weight of her past lift, replaced by the confident promise of her future. The revival was complete. Grace Miller had transformed adversity into achievement, and her career's new turning point beckoned with limitless horizons. The high-backed leather chairs of Seaside Manor's grand boardroom surrounded a polished mahogany table where the resort's senior leadership gathered for the quarterly shareholder meeting. Outside, fog rolled in from the Pacific, lending the coastal fortress an eerie hush. Inside, packets of financial reports and development proposals lay neatly arranged before each executive. Grace Miller, now a full-fledged leadership development program participant, sat in the front row, an honored guest invited by Daniel Reed himself. She'd spent the morning presenting her findings on streamlining guest check-in processes. Her suggestions had met nods of approval and discreet applause from board members. Following her presentation, she slipped into the back corridor to retrieve her notes before the meeting's final segment. Unbeknownst to her, two figures watched from a mirrored window in the adjacent VIP lounge. Vanessa Walker, her brunette bob swept over one shoulder, leaned close to Fiona Brooks. Fiona's tailored blazer pinched at her narrow waist. They exchanged a cold smile. "It's time," Vanessa murmured, her tone suffused with vindictive glee. "She's at her most vulnerable, alone in the corridor." Fiona nodded. "We have everything in place. No one will suspect until it's too late."
Moments later,
Grace passed under a vaulted arch-marked VIP lounge as she clutched her folder. A soft knock preceded the door sliding open. A woman in a dark suit, Fiona's accomplice, Marcus, the banquet manager, appeared. "Ms. Miller, there's an urgent request from Mr. Reed to meet in the lounge for follow-up on your proposal." His practiced expression conveyed plausible authority. Her heart fluttered. It couldn't be false. She'd earned Daniel's trust. "Thank you," she said, stepping inside. The lounge's plush carpets muffled her footsteps. Soft music played over hidden speakers. She rounded a velvet couch and froze. Both Vanessa and Fiona stood before a richly paneled side table. A black SUV ID badge hung around Fiona's neck. "Grace," Vanessa began, sweet poison in her smile. "Congratulations on your presentation. We wanted to offer our personal thanks." Grace's voice caught. "Ms. Brooks even offered to mentor me." She glanced at Fiona's name tag. "You asked for me?" Fiona's eyes gleamed.
"Yes.
"We have a private proposal, one that just can't wait until after the meeting." Grace stepped forward, curious. Vanessa handed her a sealed envelope. Its contents, an offer to lead a new Walker Resorts joint project, sounded thrilling. "Open it," Vanessa urged. Fiona moved to push a glass-paneled door shut. Grace's name hovered on her lips. Wait, but the door clicked locked, mechanically, without keycard. Grace's pulse hammered. What's happening? Vanessa's mask slipped. You really thought you were above reproach, didn't you? She snatched the envelope back. Daniel and Cole restored your job, but we have the final say. Fiona produced a set of steel handcuffs. You're going to help us neutralize Reed's next shareholder push by making sure you're nowhere to be found. With a swift motion, they clasped one cuff to Grace's wrist and the other to a brass fixture on the wall. Grace's eyes widened in shock. Vanessa eased onto an armchair, crossing her legs. Don't scream, Fiona warned. We're professionals. In the SUV idling outside the back entrance, Marcus held the engine running. Vanessa slid into the passenger seat, her heels clicking on the floorboard. Fiona took the back with Grace, guiding her into the plush leather interior where she was forced onto a fold-down seat. The vehicle purred forward into the misty service road. Grace's mind raced. She recollected their earlier conspiracy, planted tips, falsified logs, stolen earring allegation, and realized their ambitions had escalated drastically. This was no longer corporate sabotage, but personal vengeance. Fiona glanced at her through the tinted window. By tonight, no one will find you until we decide otherwise. Vanessa leaned over. And by tomorrow morning, we expect the board to endorse a joint merger with Walker Resorts. No objections or we expose other indiscretions. Grace's throat tightened. She fought panic. As she remembered her brother Ethan's debt, her father's failing health hung like a weight. If she did not escape, her family would lose everything. Back in the boardroom, Daniel paused mid-sentence when the elaborate wooden double doors clicked open. Security Chief Angela Marin entered, urgency in her stride. Behind her, Cole trailed, phone in hand. Daniel, Angela whispered. We have a security breach. Ms. Miller's access badge was used to open the VIP lounge at 1:47 p.m., but her badge was inactive, suspended as of yesterday. Daniel's brow furrowed. She's suspended, yet her badge works? That's impossible. He exchanged a look with Cole. Cole's voice was tight. Someone used duplicate credentials. That means they lured her in. He showed Daniel the digital logs, badge reactivation, motion sensors in the lounge. Door locked afterward. She's been taken. Daniel's heart pounded. Find security cams along the service roads. Track that SUV license. Angela tapped her earpiece. On it. Cole pulled up the resort's vehicle logs. That SUV, black Range Rover, plate RS 37D, belongs to Marcus. He swiped his badge to access Marcus's personnel record. He's our banquet manager, but no scheduled events at this hour. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Fiona's involvement was suspected, but I didn't imagine she'd resort to kidnapping. Angela returned. We've got a license plate match on security cameras. SUV headed north toward Emerald Cove Road. They're off property. Daniel stood. I'm going with Cole. Secure the perimeter, Angela. Notify local police. Cole and Daniel piled into Daniel's SUV, siren blaring onto the staff-only lanes. Sirens wailed in the distance as the resort security and local patrols coordinated. Here, Angela called out, pointing to a grainy camera feed. Last seen on a service road near mile marker 12, Emerald Cove Road. Cole punched that destination into his GPS. 2 minutes, he muttered. The coastal highway unfurled before them, cliffs plunging into white-capped waves. Each bend in the road felt like an eternity as they sped toward the unknown. Daniel's phone buzzed with an incoming text from Marissa Chin, the compliance officer. Marissa, I notified District 11 Sheriff's Office. They're dispatching AK-9 unit. ETA 10 minutes. Daniel exhaled. We have a narrow window. Cole clasped the steering wheel. Fiona thinks she can outmaneuver corporate rules. Let's show her real enforcement. A rusty service gate marked private property, No trespassing stood ajar at the mouth of a gravel driveway. The Range Rover parked inside, lights off. Beyond it, a derelict warehouse loomed. Daniel and Cole skidded to a halt. Daniel killed the engine. They climbed out, sidearms holstered but hands ready. The Pacific wind whipped around them as they approached the warehouse door. Cole peeked in through a grimy window. Grace sat on the floor, cuffed to a metal support beam, her eyes swollen but fiercely alert. Fiona Brooks watched from midroom, phone in hand, likely coordinating with Vanessa. Daniel raised a hand to Cole. 1, 2, 3, go. They burst through the door in unison. Fiona spun, fury contorting her face. You can't do this. Cole advanced. It's over, Fiona. Step away. Daniel strode toward Grace, drew his handcuffs, and unlocked her bonds. She winced but nodded as he unshackled her. Grace, are you all right? He asked gently. Her voice trembled.
Yes.
Thank you. Fiona snarled. You'll regret this. The board. Daniel's eyes blazed. You've committed multiple felonies: kidnapping, false imprisonment, extortion. He pointed to the door. You're under citizen's arrest. The sheriff's unit is 5 minutes out. Don't make it worse. Across the room, Marcus cowered, clutching his tray of catering supplies. Vanessa stepped forward in the doorway, arms crossed. Daniel, think carefully. A sudden roar sounded outside, and headlights swept over broken windows. Blue and red lights flashed as deputies raced in. Vanessa's composure cracked. She bolted past Cole, racing toward a side exit, but a deputy tackled her at the threshold. She screamed as handcuffs clicked. Fiona stood paralyzed as Daniel approached, badge out. Fiona Brooks, you're detained. In the warehouse's clearing dusk, deputies read Miranda rights to Vanessa and Fiona, leading them away in custody. Daniel knelt beside Grace, examining her wrist for bruises. Cole stood guard at the entrance, directing deputies to seize the Range Rover and secure Fiona's phone for evidence. Detective Laura Chavez from District 11 arrived, shaking hands with Daniel. Your detailed logs made this quick, she said. Daniel nodded. We couldn't let them destroy her career or ruin our resort's integrity. Detective Chavez turned to Grace.
Mom.
We'll escort you to the station for a statement, then arrange medical evaluation. Grace exhaled and closed her eyes. Thank you. Cole offered her his arm. I'll come with you. Daniel watched them go, his chest tight with relief and pride. 3 days later, Grace returned to Seaside Manor in plain clothes and a burgundy blazer, her first day back in a management role without suspicion. Daniel and Cole awaited her in Daniel's office, their faces bright with victory. You, Daniel said, handing her an official badge inscribed Assistant Operations Manager, earned this not just with ideas but with courage. Cole added, and we've pushed your next rotation ahead, construction management for the new spa build. You made that happen. Grace pressed the badge over her heart, tears in her eyes. I don't know how to thank you both. Daniel smiled. Just keep leading. As Grace walked the polished corridors, employees paused to salute her. She returned their smiles, feeling both humbled and empowered. Beyond the resort windows, the Pacific glimmered under the sunrise, a promise that even the darkest storms could clear, revealing boundless horizons. 6 months had passed since the storm of Vanessa Walker and Fiona Brooks's conspiracy had blown itself out in court. The trial transcripts, public record, detailed every step of their malicious frame-up, leading to convictions on charges of conspiracy, defamation, and corporate fraud. Fiona Brooks received a 2-year sentence with community service. Vanessa Walker, as the mastermind, was sentenced to 3 years and banned from any leadership role in the hospitality industry. Their fall from privilege served as a stark reminder: no amount of status or wealth excuses criminal conduct. Meanwhile, at Seaside Manor, the atmosphere had transformed entirely. Under new leadership, Daniel Reed's careful stewardship buttressed by Cole Reed's operational insight, the resort thrived. Investors lauded its transparency and ethical renewal. Guest satisfaction soared to record highs. The The scandal that once threatened its reputation became the crucible from which a stronger corporate culture emerged. At the Miller household in coastal Oregon, life took on a brighter hue. John Miller's health stabilized as Grace used her leadership stipend to cover his treatments and secure a wheelchair ramp for their front porch. His coughs, once a daily threat, receded into the past. Now he walked the shoreline each dawn, cane in hand, watching the sun crest the waves. Ethan Miller, Grace's older brother, entered a dedicated rehabilitation program funded by Grace's educational stipend and Daniel's loan forgiveness program. Under counseling and vocational training, he found a stable position at the local fire department dispatch center, learning responsibility and regaining his self-respect. At Grace's GED graduation ceremony, he presented her with a framed motivational quote, "Second chances are the hinges on which destiny swings." More than anyone, Ethan understood her sacrifice. Karen Miller, their mother, had undergone her own transformation. No longer did she view Grace's earnings solely through the lens of debt repayment. Instead, she actively supported her daughter's aspirations, driving her to night classes when the weather turned foul, cheering her on at campus events, and sharing a weekly mother-daughter writing journal in which they recorded their dreams and gratitude. At the same commencement ceremony, Karen stood beside her youngest, tears streaming as she whispered, "I'm so proud of the woman you've become." On a golden summer evening, the cliffs above the Pacific at Seaside Manor hosted an intimate wedding. Fairy lights draped between driftwood arches. Wildflowers blossomed in glass vases. Guests gathered on white folding chairs overlooking the surf as Grace appeared in a simple ivory dress, no frills, just elegance reflecting her down-to-earth nature. Cole stood at the altar in a charcoal suit, his smiling face mirroring the depth of his love. Daniel Reed officiated, his tone both solemn and joyous. "We are here to celebrate the union of two extraordinary individuals, Grace and Cole, whose journey together has embodied resilience, integrity, and devotion." He spoke of how they had met, of their unlikely partnership across class lines, and of the conspiracies they had overcome. Their vows were unpretentious yet deeply moving. "Cole, Grace, you have shown me the true meaning of strength and compassion. I vow to support your dreams, to stand by you through calm and storm, and to honor the remarkable person you are. Grace, Cole, you saw my worth when others looked away. I promise to build our life on honesty, to nurture your hopes as you have mine, and to love you with every part of my being." They sealed their vows with a kiss as handclaps and cheers rose above the waves. Danielle, Ethan, John, and Karen beamed from the front row. Daniel stood proudly with Marissa Chun at his side, both smiling as they witnessed the culmination of Grace's remarkable journey. Within weeks of the wedding, Grace assumed her permanent role as Assistant Director of Guest Experience, a position created specifically to harness her unique perspective. She led monthly workshops for new hires, sharing her story to inspire empathy and dedication. Her signature program, Grace's Guest Empathy Training, became a cornerstone of the resort's onboarding, lauded by the American Hospitality Association as a model for cultivating genuine guest relations. Cole, now general manager of Seaside Manor, oversaw the resort's expanded luxury villas, projects Grace had helped design during her trainee rotation. Together, they launched a scholarship fund for local students pursuing hospitality careers. Funded partly by the resort and partly by Daniel's own philanthropic foundation, Fiona Brooks's spot on the board of directors had been abolished. Vanessa Walker's shares were redistributed to long-term employees as stock bonuses. Seaside Manor's corporate bylaws were rewritten to include strict anti-retaliation clauses, ensuring no future scheme could so easily target rank-and-file staff. In the months following Grace and Cole's nuptials, Daniel Reed formalized a partnership with an international hospitality school in Switzerland. He announced to the board that he would step down as CEO in 2 years to pursue global studies in order to bring cutting-edge practices back to coastal Oregon. At the retirement gala held in his honor, he said, "Leadership is not a title, it's the responsibility to elevate others. If I have succeeded, It is because I served people like Grace, who taught me that true strength arises from kindness, integrity, and unrelenting perseverance. He passed the torch to a newly appointed executive team, including Cole and Grace, confident they would guide Seaside Manor toward even brighter horizons. News of Grace Miller's journey, from overburdened housekeeper to influential hospitality leader, spread across industry publications. The American Hotel and Lodging Association featured her in their Rising Stars profile, citing her as an exemplar of how adversity, when met with courage and supported by genuine leadership, can drive innovation and human-centered excellence. Local news stations covered the Miller family story, portraying them as embodiments of the American ideal, resilience, family loyalty, and the pursuit of education. Community colleges reported a spike in non-traditional student enrollments, inspired by Grace's triumph. As Grace stood on the balcony of her seaside suite one evening, ocean breeze tousling her hair, she reflected on her odyssey. Responsibility. Leaving high school to support her family had been painful but essential, teaching her the weight and dignity of sacrifice. Integrity. When smears and conspiracies threatened to undo her, she leaned into honesty and truth, proving that character prevails over deceit. Resilience. The endless hours of work, study, and recovery forged a resolve that no corporate intrigue could break. Empathy. Meeting people, Daniel, Cole, professors, classmates, guests, without prejudice revealed the shared humanity behind every role. In the glow of sunset, Grace penned a final entry in her leather-bound Life Lessons journal. Adversity is not an end, but a forge. The fires of hardship refine our character. When met with honor and compassion, even the darkest storms can clear, revealing potential we never knew we had. Leadership is not about titles or privilege, it is about serving others and lifting them up. May we all be leaders in our own lives, guided by kindness, perseverance, and unwavering integrity. Below her words, she tucked a pressed wildflower picked from the cliffs, a reminder that beauty flourishes even in harsh landscapes. Across the bay, the lighthouse beams swept faithfully over the dark waters. Grace Miller watched it turn, each flash a testament to guiding lights, mentors, family, friends that had steered her through the fiercest night. With Cole at her side, with her family healed, and with a new generation inspired by her story, she knew her journey was just beginning. In the end, Seaside Manor was more than a resort. It was a beacon of possibility. And in that light, anyone, no matter how humble their beginnings, could chart a course toward hope, achievement, and a life defined by generosity of spirit. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.